Young man at work, don't do all of it too much. Come visit.
It being 10:30, I'd like to call the regular meeting of May 10th, 2017 of the Greater Lafourche Port Commission to order. Mr. Dustin Marble, you please, the pledge of allegiance, please.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to thank everyone for coming and remind you, please silence your cell phones. Mr. Sherman, roll call vote, please.
Yes, sir. Seat A, Chucky Sherman here. Seat B, Perry Gisclair.
Here.
Seat C, Chris Godet.
here.
Seat D, Rodney Gisclair.
Here.
Seat E, Wilbert Collins, absent. Seat F, Larry Griffin.
Here.
Seat G, John Mellison.
Here.
Seat H, Jimmy Gidrin.
Here.
Seat I, Irvin Bruce.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sherby. Next is consider approval of the minutes of the April 12, 2017 regular meeting.
Move. Second.
By Mr. Griffin, second by Mr. Mellison. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next is Executive Director's approval. Mr. Shelso.
Thank you, Mr. President. First on the agenda is our Northern Expansion projects. Number one project, Northern Expansion Slip C, 950 linear foot west bulkhead. Angela Fisio and Mr. Larry Fisio.
Yes, that project is complete. Blanchard Construction Company was the contractor. The lien period is finished. We have not received a liens pre-certificate yet, but we did receive the change order number 1. So we're only waiting on the lien pre-certificate.
Any questions?
We gave as-built drawings to Serena today.
Thank you, Mr. Larry.
Okay, and Northern Expansion Slip C, 950 linear foot west sweep dredge.
That project, RLB is the contractor. He's on site and was dredging. He just blew his engine in the dredge, and they're gonna have to overhaul the dredge. We found out yesterday that they had about 15,000 yards of material done out of 105, and they estimated that it would be another 30 days before they complete. The project ends on May 18th is the last day. It is $975 a day liquidated damages.
Any questions? Thank you.
Northern Expansion Slip C, 939 foot west bulkhead.
Yes, the contract on this job is sea-level construction. They haven't mowed yet. We are reviewing. We have reviewed several submittals. They have a material on order. They are scheduled to mow on Monday, May 22nd.
Mr. Picciola, is that the first time sea level works for Port Fourche?
No, they. I think they did the debris fence
Okay.
for y'all.
All right. Thank you.
All right, Northern Expansion Slip C, 1,671 linear foot east bulkhead, Piciola and Associates.
This is a new project we've given, and we signed the contract in April. We've been surveying. We've actually got the plans about 90% complete. We've met with Davey. We should be ready to go to DOTD Port Priority sometime next week with plans and specs for approval.
Any other questions?
We're gonna be sending our letter to phase the project very shortly, and we should know for sure at the end of this session if the funding that we have for it from the state DOTD is gonna go through. All indications right now is at least that is safe in the budget. So keeping our fingers crossed, and if that goes through, then we'll be ready to advertise and award bids, hopefully in sometime in June, July timeframe.
This summer for
This
sure.
summer, yeah.
Thank you, Drew.
Thank you.
Okay, the Northern Expansion Slip D Dredge Phase 1. Jay Wayne plays on engineer's job.
This project is to fill in the Rappelais Pond. It has a mitigation area as well as an area on the northern side of the flotation canal. We are still working with the staff and the environmental groups just to figure out which elevation to fill those areas on. We hope to have that done pretty soon, and we're ready pretty much to start advertising once that is finished.
Any question?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, airport projects, Richard.
Okay, airport operations in the month of April, we had 2,336 operations, which was our best month of the year so far, and we had 8,415 passengers for an annual total 8,427 operations to date and 35,133 passengers. Regarding taxiway A, I don't have any real additional news for you except that we're waiting for the FAA to give us approval to move forward on that, which could be any day or it could be another month or two. But I'll keep you updated. That's all I have, unless you all have any questions.
Thank you, Richard.
Thanks, Richard. Okay, other port projects, first is the section 203 feasibility study, GIS engineering. Dustin.
Thank you, Dustin Marlborough with GIS. The study here is moving along. 2 weeks ago, we had our milestone meeting with the Corps and the associated agencies. That went well. That was kind of a box checker to get through that first phase of the scoping and the scoping report. We're now moving towards the tentatively selected plan phase, where we have to justify what is the least costly alternative. As I've mentioned before in previous reports, on the table besides that tentatively selected plan, because of our urgency and need for beneficial use, there will be a locally preferred plan associated to compare side by side with that. We expect, normally that's usually from the scoping report milestone to the next one's about a year. We met with Chet yesterday and we're going to try to squunch that down to about 6 months. So when the EIS, when we come out with the draft EIS in November, hopefully we're right in the same ballpark of having that tentatively selected plan to submit and move forward and get approval on. The economics piece is about 65–70% complete. It comes at a good time. I think Chet's in need of some figures for some things that they're working on. And we'll starting now that we're getting into this TSP plan, we're going to engage Chet, likely Joni, on some more bi-weekly meetings to engage them as to some of the details that we're going to need to flush out from a cost standpoint, what we're going to include, what we can include, what we can disclude, because obviously we want to get the cost down for the project as best we can. So that's kind of where we're at. Things are progressing. It's a slow process, but we're trying to advance it and speed it up as best we can. Any questions?
Yes.
Yes,
On
sir.
the economic standpoint of it, you're satisfied with the response from the
So
DCs?
with the tenants and the industry, the response has been great.
Okay.
The economics at this point, which is still somewhat preliminary, Chet and I had detailed discussions about this yesterday. We need to make sure that there's no benefits that are out there that we're not capturing. So we're investigating that, and that next 35% of what those guys are going to be doing is really to make sure that we're capturing everything that we need from a benefits side. So this study is different than any feasibility study, navigation feasibility study that's ever been done, dealing with OSVs rather than Panamax vessels and those kind of things. So the Corps is going to be new in reviewing it. The guys that are helping us with the economics is also new to this. So it's kind of been a learning curve for everybody, which is going to be why over the next 4 or 5 months, including Chet and Joni in those conversations, to catch them up to speed on those, what this industry really does and where we can recognize those benefits. And likely engaging, again, some duplicate 3 meetings or so with I know we've met once and twice with a few of them, but engaging the industry as well to make sure that we're capturing all the benefits that maybe we may not know about. So.
Any other questions?
And the reason, because we're doing something that's different than other feasibility studies, because of just what we're dealing with every day is different than everything else for the most part. Having these meetings with the Corps periodically, both on the district level as well as the federal, the Washington D.C. level, keeping them informed should expedite on the review on the back end. At least we can hope for that.
Yeah, and like I mentioned last meeting, we're meeting with the folks that are going to have this package in their hand in the end, and asking the questions up front to where we don't get to the end and have to rework a whole bunch of stuff. So And we plan to continue to do that at certain milestones through this next 5 to 6 month process to get to that TSP.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Okay, next is the GO2 beach repairs project, and as we said on Monday evening, we're kind of in that holding pattern, waiting for the state to finalize their review and submit our appeal to the FEMA district office in Texas. So that's where we are right now. Town of Golden Meadow flood wall improvements, bulkhead, Jalen plays on.
Believe it or not, the contractor's pretty close to being finished. You can see he's been doing a good job backfilling behind the new bulkhead. He does still have some wharf repairs and some tie-up pallets to reinstall, but I think he'll be through in the next week or so.
So all the bulkheads are complete?
The bulkhead is complete.
Any other questions? Thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, and the Connector Road, that project is complete, as we said. We're in the clear lien period now. We should have, that ends June 12th. So we should have a clear lien certificate at that point. Any questions on that project? And then the airport maintenance shop addition, we're also in the clear lien period now, and that ends June 2nd. So again, we'll have a clear lien certificate after that, and it'll be complete. Any questions on that? Okay. Now we have a presentation by Louisiana Strategic Adaptations for Future Environments, LA Safe, Nick Mathern. Come up. Welcome, thank you.
Thank you, Chet. Again, my name is Nick Mathern. I'm project manager for CB&I on the LA Safe program. This is a program with the Office of Community Development for the state, working off of a grant from Housing and Urban Development. They received this grant to start a pilot program in 6 parishes, including Lafourche, to develop what we're calling or thinking of as economic and cultural resiliency plans. Just a sort of a story to illustrate what LA Safe is looking to do. 2005, after Hurricane Katrina, a lot of St. Bernard Parish migrated to St. Tammany Parish, and that left both parishes in dire straits. St. Tammany, because now they had this influx of residents that they didn't really have the infrastructure to service, and St. Bernard, because now they had all this infrastructure with no tax base to keep it up. So had both those parishes anticipated something like that happening and planned for what to do in that sort of situation, both would be in a much better state than they are in today, and definitely were for that 5-year period after Hurricane Katrina. For Lafourche Parish, I think we all, living here, and personally having grown up in South Lafourche and seeing how that northward migration is happening on its own, we all understand the future that our parish could be facing, especially in light of the 2017 master plan that's working its way through the state legislature right now. So LA Safe, Louisiana Strategic Adaptations for Future Environments, is an exercise in going out to these 6 parishes to start with as a pilot program, eventually hoping to spread it to the other parishes, at least the other coastal parishes in the future, to go out to the residents and say, here's what we're looking at with the state master plan. This is what we anticipate your parish to look like in 50 years. Knowing that the landscape is going to be drastically different 50 years from now, what can we do now, seeing current trends and predicting what's going to happen in the future, whether it's through the housing market, education, through the economy that you guys are directly involved in? What can we do now to plan to make sure that Lafourche Parish is going to be as prosperous and economically resilient as it can be 50 years from now? So we are going through, we already conducted our first parish-wide meeting that took place last month in Matthews at the government complex, and now we're breaking out into smaller community meetings. On May 30th, Tuesday, we're actually going to have a meeting for the Vietnamese and Cambodian communities around the areas at St. Peter in La Rose. That'll be, again, Tuesday, May 30th at 6 p.m. The following day, May 31st, Wednesday, we're going to come down to St. Joseph Catholic Church in Galliano at 6 p.m. at the Recreation Center behind the church. On Thursday, June 1st, we'll be in the central Lafourche area at the Lockport Town Fire Station. And on Monday, June 5th, we'll be in the northern part of the parish at St. Thomas Aquinas Catholic Church on the campus of Nichols to address the needs of the northern parts of the parish. Today, my colleague Kia Bickham and I from CBNI will be accompanying Joni and John down to a tour of the port. I haven't had a proper tour of the port in a couple of years, and if you haven't been down there in 2 weeks, it's drastically different. So it'll be good to see the state of things there, to anticipate or to see where things are growing, and to anticipate, especially with the slip expansions, what could be the needs of the port and the local economy moving forward. So if we have any questions, I'll definitely take those. If not, thank you guys for the time, and appreciate the opportunity to televise our meeting announcements there to hopefully get out to the community. So thanks a lot.
Thank you, Nick.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you very much, Mr. Shell. So next we have public comment. If none, we'll move on to committee reports. And first committee is Executive Committee. Members are Perry Jusclair, Chairman, Larry Griffin, Chucky Shermy, and John Mellison Jr. First on the agenda is consider approving a request for Omni Energy Services to sublease a portion of site GLF 625.
Okay, so Omni wants to sublease a portion to FCC Environmental. We've actually approved FCC on another site before, so we have no issue with approving that sublease. So the recommendation is for the board to accept that.
Move.
Moved by Mr. Mellison, second by Mr. Shermy. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next is consider approving an agreement with Kaiwet Land for site GLF 306.
Oh, something happened. But anyway, the site is along AJS Day Road in Fouchon. It's a site that was under lease, and then last June it was an overflow site for Martin Terminal, and they didn't need it anymore, so they gave up that lease. We had a lease approved. The board approved the lease on it. The company Louisiana Tanks did not. The job that they needed the lease for did not happen yet. So what we're suggesting is that we agree with Cayuettes to continue to start paying that lease for the time being as we market the property, so we can continue to maintain that property.
Any questions? Moved by Mr. Gode, second by Mr. Gisclair. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next is consider approving the purchase and lease of parking lot improvements on site South Lafourche Industrial Park 10 to Rotorcraft.
Okay, so as in the past, just to reiterate, this is a parking area that Rotorcraft has constructed. We had it appraised, and we are purchasing the parking lot basically back, those improvements from them, and they will then lease it from us through the period of their primary term. So the recommendation is to approve that.
Moved by Mr. Bruce, second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Next is consider the hiring of summer employees.
Okay, that time of year again, we need to hire, as Mr. Larry always likes to say, what do we call them?
The mosquito crew.
Yes, the mosquito crew. All right, so we have a list of college students that have listed their interest in working for the Port Commission. Out of this list, we have 2 that have worked for us in the past that our maintenance crew, as we do every year, has chosen to continue work with us. So we will certainly offer Luke Toops and Randy Wells, 2 of those 6 positions that we have. So now we will pick out of the cup the rest of the names, and we'll offer 4 more of these in the list that we pick.
We started from Chucky, has already picked.
Okay.
We'll read as we go. Go ahead and take one.
Which one?
Pass it back.
Anything else in there? We'll pick the rest up right here.
Yeah, just put it in here.
Yep, until we finish.
Okay, first speak with Mr. Sherman.
Okay, first I got Ian Bourgeois.
Next, Tyler Thibodeau.
Next is Devin Abear.
And I have Bradley Mathern.
I have Alex Petrie.
And I'm gonna start off with an apology. I'd like to apologize to Mr. Dillon if I get his first name wrong. Shakaran Dillon.
Got it right.
All right.
Seth Johnson. Brennan Carrillo.
Okay. Brennan Carrier.
Yeah.
Ryan Istry.
Okay.
And Sean Buzigard.
All right. So we will, out of the list of names we just called, we will offer to fill those first four positions in the order that the names were announced and picked. Okay? And until we get to 6.
Do we need a motion?
Yes.
Move.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Melanson, second by Mr. Sherman. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carries. Next, we move into Permits and Waterways Committee. Members are Chucky Sherman, Chairman, Wilbur Collins, Larry Griffin, and Perry Jusper. Mr. Sherman.
Thank you, Mr. President. All we have today is permit Lafourche Parish Water District Number 1. Proposed a 1,596-foot of new 24-inch line will be installed via open trench and directional drilling. Proposed location of 24-inch water line near the Lee, Ontario structure floodgate. And that's all we have, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, Mr. Sherman. Next, we move into construction and development. Go ahead. Mr.
While we're in the waterways, you hear anything lately about the offshore anchorage?
No, it's still in the process. No.
Okay, thank you.
Now we move on to Construction and Development Committee. Members are Irvin Bruce Chairman, Larry Griffin, Perry Jusclair, and Rodney Jusclair. Mr. Bruce.
Thank you, Mr. President. Consider approving the lowest responsive bidder for an emergency debris removal project.
Okay, this is our pre-disaster debris removal that we've been doing for the last several years. We received one bid from DRC Emergency Services. After reviewing all of the prices, they are in order with what we've seen in the past. So the recommendation is to approve.
Move by Mr. Griffin, second by Mr. Guidry. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Consider approving Wisner Assess Agreement for additional soil borings.
Okay, we want to go on to Wisner property, which means we need to have an agreement to do some investigatory soil borings so that we can look at the makeup of the soils under that island, so we can start to look at how we're going to design into the future as we're negotiating a lease on that property. So the recommendation is to approve this agreement for this access agreement for soil borings.
Moved by Mr. Bruce, second by Mr. Gisclair. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
That's all we have, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruce. Next is Finance Committee. Members are John Melanson, Jr., Chairman, Jimmy Guidry, Chris Gaudier, and Perry Jusclair. Mr. Melanson.
Morning, and thank you, Mr. President. We'll begin by announcing invoices over $10,000 along with the rest of our expenditures for the month. Item 1, Clerk of Court, $283,148.72, and that's for the Slip C 950 feet West Bulkhead Project retainage. Item 2, South Lafourche Levy District, $200,000 That is for the 2017 lock operations. Line item 3, Rotorcraft Leasing Company, $178,216.11, and that is for the acquisition of the extended parking lot development. Line item 4, GIS Engineering, $141,399.22, and that is for the integrated feasibility study. Line item 5, RBL Contracting Incorporated, $82,800, and that is for slip C 950 feet west sweep dredging. Line item 6, PCO and Associates, $60,375.90, and that is for the slip C phase 3 1,671 feet east bulkhead. Line item 7, Angelet PCO LLC, $56,290.56, and that's for slip C 939 feet of bulkhead. Item 8, Epic Aviation, $39,220.24, and that is fuel for resale and truck rental. Line item 9, Sea Level Construction, $32,737.46, and that is for slip C 939 feet of bulkhead. Item 10, Vision Communication, $24,656.25, and that is for cable, internet, and phone services. Item 11, Grand Isle Shipyard Incorporated, $17,356.77, and that is for contract labor for the FBO and limestone for the connector road. Item 12, American Integration Contractors, $16,345.20, and that's for technical services. Bank of America, $16,295.42, and that is for port credit card charges. Item 14, Pictometry, $16,020.66, and that is for a quarter cost share of pictometry flight. That is a difficult word, I want to let y'all know. Item 15, Expert Technology, $12,369.12, and that is for IT equipment. And item 16, HCR Network Technologies, $10,010, and that is also for technical services. That, along with our other expenditures, brings us to a grand total of $1,686,943.98. I'd like to make a motion, we accept these expenditures.
Moved by Mr. Molison, second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion?
I just wanted to mention on the pictometry that you talked about, April, if you want to tell them who's involved in that, what that is, that's our aerial. We have some right here, so we do aerial shots of the port and everything. That's what we're paying for, but.
Right. So the aerial imagery was flown in March 2016. So every year there's a payment, and it's the assessor's office is leading that effort, but the parish, 911 communications, and the port are all contributing.
Any questions for Ms. Danos?
Any other discussion?
I have one more left.
No, I'm going to public comment.
We didn't vote yet.
Any public comment?
Bingo.
All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Sorry about Mr. President, I lost track of that. Next on the agenda is consider approving the 2016 financial audit, and that'll be presented by Lano and Felger, and Mr. Mark Felger will be presenting that at this time.
Good morning, gentlemen. Again, as I did Monday night, I apologize that I'm the person making this presentation rather than Ms. Tipton, who is the audit manager on the job. I know you'd much prefer to see her making this presentation. You guys are probably tired of hearing me talk. I realize I've been doing this so long when you were talking about the slips that the first time I did the audit here, the E-slip was just shaped like an L. Okay, okay. We're going to get into a discussion of the audit results for our 2016 audit. We have issued an auditor's opinion on the financial statements, which is on page Roman numeral XI in the financial statements. Our opinion is what's called an unmodified opinion, which is the best type of opinion we can give. and that just states that the financial statements as presented, excuse me,
You're out of practice, Mr.
I'm out of practice, yes. Yes. The actual opinion is the bottom paragraph of the page. It says the financial statements presented, referred to above, present fairly in all material respects the respective financial position of the Greater Lafourche Port Commission as of December 31st, 2016 and 15, and the respective changes in its financial position and cash flows thereof for the years then ended, in accordance with generally accepted accounting principles. Now, the opinion has really nothing to do with the financial condition of the port. It just states that the financial statements are a fair representation of that in accordance with accounting principles that are generally accepted in the United States. The Yellow Book report, or the Governmental Auditing Standards report, is on page 39. We report on compliance with certain laws and regulations and also on internal controls. That report has no findings regarding compliance, and we've noted no deficiencies or no reportable deficiencies in internal control. Usually we have a single audit report as well to present, which is required when your federal expenditures are over $750,000. This year you had very, very little in the way of any type of federal grants. In prior years, you had large port security grants, FAA grants, sometimes some grants from EDA for construction of port facilities. This year, there were very small amounts of grants for a few various projects, but it only amounted to about $200,000 in total, total construction grants, and that would be federal and state. So we didn't get nearly enough money to have to do the single audit. Okay. Touching on basically the financial highlights in the report. The port's net position, which we used to refer to as net assets in a for-profit entity, which you might be more familiar with, this would be equity. Basically, the assets minus the liabilities is $267.6 million. Now, that sounds like a lot, but most of that is actually tied up in construction of port facilities. Approximately $192 million of the $267 million is your net investment in your physical plant. As those assets are depreciated, that would reduce your net equity, but right now you're actually constructing more assets than you're depreciating every year. That's an increase of 3.6% from the previous year. Total operating revenues were $27.5 million. That is basically fees and lease revenues generated from port tenants and airport tenants. That's an increase of 4.9% from the previous year, and that's despite the loss of about $3.2 million of revenue from the 20% lease adjustment you made because of the current conditions in the oil field. Cash and investments total $89.5 million, which is about a 9% increase over the previous year. That does also seem like a lot of money, but it's my understanding that most of that is earmarked for the deep draft project and the development of Fouchon Island. In fact, that's probably just a small portion of what that project will cost. So
it's about $500 million.
Yes. So you'll need to find some funding from other sources. This is not a project that you'll be able to finance through your own operations. Okay. Operating profits were $3.8 million. That's a decrease from the previous year. The biggest change from the previous year was that you spent $2 million on a flotation canal dredge project that was written off as maintenance expense. That's not a capitalizable facility for the port, like putting in a bulkhead or even dredging the slip outside of the bulkhead, which gets capitalized. This is a navigable waterway that is basically not really owned by the port. Your net income before capital grants and extraordinary items was $9.2 million. It's also a decrease of 17.2% from the previous year, again for the same reason. If you take out the $2 million flotation canal dredge, the numbers would have been approximately similar to the previous year. Total capital grants were $260,000, and expense and maintenance grants were $689,000. basically the expense and maintenance grants, those are grants that you receive for projects that will not be capitalized as fixed assets for the port. It would include anything that would be, for the flotation canal or for any other facilities that are not owned by the port, any maintenance of Bayou Lafourche, or even, you used to get a lot of money to maintain Highway 1, which I don't think we're doing anymore. But basically, those are grants that are not for capital projects. Again, both of those numbers would decrease significantly from the previous years. Your total revenues based on their source, of course, the largest percentage of these revenues are your self-generated fees, leases, and other fees that you charge to tenants. It's 83%. That's a much larger proportion than in most prior years because the capital construction grants were so low this year. Usually that's approximately 20% of your total revenues. This year it was only 1%. So that caused your self-generated fees to be a larger percentage of your total revenues. This basically shows the same information but on a 6-year trend. You can see the largest proportion of all revenues is generally the self-generated fees, although the blue bar, the construction grants, typically has run in previous years in this 3-year cycle, which matches the state's port priority budget, where most of the money is available in the first year of the project, and then it dwindles in the other years. This year, primarily because there are no real federal grants, in the last few years you've received considerable amounts of money in port security, which those projects seem to have run their course, at least for now. I don't know if there are any new projects being considered.
We're hoping to get a projects approved in this coming up round.
Right, and of course then the taxiway, the FAA project, that should boost your federal revenues. And also I believe the budget for 2017 is for about $10 million in capital construction grants. For your operating income, this is broken down between seaport and airport facilities. The seaport revenue has increased to a total of 4.1% of your total revenues. In the prior year, that was only 2.9%. But the biggest change came from taking over the fuel sales. In the past, you had a contractor that was operating that facility and paying rent to you. Now you're generating or selling the fuel on your own. Without the fuel sales, your total revenues at the airport would have decreased by $30,000, which I imagine is the rent that you were receiving from the tenant that was running the fuel operations. Okay. Then looking at expenditures, of course, the seaport is the largest generator of revenue. It's also the largest share of your expenses. Harbor police, airport costs, and administrative costs are all basically the same from previous years, and you can see in line from 13 all the way through 16 with very little variation. The major increase in the seaport expense, again, was the $2 million flotation canal dredge project. Looking at your expenses and other uses of funds, salary and benefits amounts to 16% of your total. Maintenance and operation of facilities, about 15%. Approximately 11% of your expenditures are leases paid to landowners, 21% in depreciation and disposal of fixed assets. Other operating expenses, 4%, and basically anything that's not included in any of those other categories. And then, excuse me, I went back one. Construction and purchase of capital equipment is 32%. Even though we received almost no funding for this, we still spent a significant amount of money on capital projects. Last year, we spent a good bit of time discussing the implementation of GASB 68, which had to do with pensions. Basically, the liability we're reporting on your books is your proportionate share of the unfunded liability for the state employee's pension plan, and also a very small amount for one employee that's in the teacher's retirement system. You have a liability in your books of $9.3 million, which is want to say you have less than 1% of the total unfunded liability, and I don't remember the exact proportion, but you have a very, very minuscule part of the total unfunded liability. These liabilities in general have increased, excuse me, over the years through a combination of decisions made by the pension plans, and really it's beyond your control, but the Governmental Accounting Standards Board has decided that governments need to show their proportionate share, because the only way these liabilities will be funded will be by increasing the amounts of contributions that all the participating employers make to fund these unfunded liabilities. Of course, they could have extraordinary investment results that could wipe out these unfunded liabilities, but that's not likely. They're going to get the money from you eventually, so that's why you have to report the liability. The actual pension contributions were $803,000. However, the pension expense as calculated under GASB 68 comes to almost 1.4 million. This, the pension expense under GASB 68 takes into consideration a lot of other factors that are calculated under accounting standards, whereas the pension contribution is calculated under state law. So it's just two different methods of calculating these expenses. The biggest contributor to your expense being higher than your contributions is that your proportionate share, while small, has actually increased over time. So you have to pick up that additional part of the liability into your expense over a short period of time. Your liability last year was $8.3 million, so you can see it's increased by about $1 million.
I have a question. On
Sure.
The liability on the unfunded over the, we're paying for sins of the past, basically.
Yes.
So, to my knowledge right now, it's anticipated whenever they passed this law that said you had to pay this unaccrued liability, that that should end in 2028 or somewhere around there.
That's their target.
I would have to anticipate that that's probably not going to be achievable.
Well, I haven't seen where they're making steady progress at reducing the unfunded liability. Let me see if I don't remember if that disclosure is still included. Yes. If you look on page 32 of the financial statements, there's a schedule of proportionate share of net pension liabilities. This is what we call required supplementary information. The column all the way to the right, it says planned fiduciary net position as a percentage of the total pension liability. Basically, that's the percentage, the funding percentage. So if you look at the state employees pension system for your December 31st, 2016 year end, the plan is 65% funded. So the unfunded portion is 35% of the total liability. You can see that it was 65% funded in 2014. That funding percentage went down to 62.7 in 15, and now it's back up to 65. What we would hope to see, now this schedule eventually will be a 10-year schedule, so you'd be able to get a 10-year view of the unfunded liability. But for now, since this standard has only been in place for 3 years, we're only showing 3 years worth of data. You would hope to see from this schedule that that funding percentage continues to rise. I haven't seen it rising consistently. Partly it was due to 2015 was a very poor year for their asset performance. Their actual earnings were much lower than their projected earnings, so the unfunded liability went up.
Thank you.
We good?
Yes.
Quick question. So that $9 million represents the unfunded portion of the liability?
That's your share of the unfunded portion. It's not the total unfunded. And you can see your share of the unfunded portion is 0.117%. So you have 1/10 of 1% of the total. If you want to get you multiply your number times or divide your number times by 0.117, you get the total unfunded liability for the whole pension plan.
9 million is what our unfunded portion is. The total portion of our liability, funded and unfunded, is probably about 27 million.
Well, we don't even calculate that. The only part that we calculate is how much has not been provided for through assets. General pension accounting has always been that if you have a pension liability and you set money aside in a trust, you do not have to report the liability as long as you fully funded in a trust. In this case, since the pension plans are not fully funded, the Governmental Accounting Standards Board decided that local governments have to show their share of the liability. Okay.
Thank you, sir.
I think I had one.
Oh, you got way to go.
I can stop now whenever you.
Oh, no,
if
please
you guys
continue.
are ready to go, but
No.
Okay. This slide shows you construction expenditures compared to the amount of external funding you have received. The blue bar is the amount of funding you've received from other governments, either federal or state. State port priority money, federal grants for construction. And you can see in each of the 6 years you have expended considerably more than you've received. The gap in 2016 was approximately $11 million that you expended on capital construction projects in excess of the amount of funding you received. So most of your construction, not most, a high percentage of your construction over the previous 6 years has been spent basically from your own operating funds rather than being funded by outside sources. We usually do a comparison of the Port Commission to other ports in the state. This graph just shows the relative size of the ports that were in the comparison. It was hard to find one that was exactly the same size as the port in terms of assets. The Port of Lake Charles is significantly bigger, while the other ports in the comparison are smaller. However, they all operate basically on the same premise. You try to attract tenants, generate revenue, to pay for the facilities that you're constructing. The operating margin of Greater Lafourche Port Commission is the highest in the sample, 22.4% versus 20.78% for Iberia and all the other ports. But the Port of St. Bernard has a negative return, which means they're probably funded mostly by tax dollars rather than by tenant fees. And this shows your return on investment. For every dollar you invest in plant assets, you have received this year a 13.65% rate of return in terms of revenue back to the port. I wish I could invest money and earn a 13.65% rate of return. So it's an indication that you have spent money wisely and are generating a return for the port, which will allow you to continue to expand facilities and serve the area. That's the end of my report. As always, I would like to thank Miranda and the entire staff for the cooperation they give us. We come in and disrupt their lives for a couple of weeks, and they're very, very cooperative, and they do a good job with giving us the information we need. Things run smoothly in that office, and I do want to thank Miranda for that. It's been a very smooth transition in the position. I'd also like to thank the board and Chet for giving us the opportunity to continue to serve as auditors. I do want to mention one other accounting standard that is coming into place. Basically, we talked about GASB 68, which dealt with pensions. GASB number 75 will deal with post-retirement healthcare benefits. It will be effective for 2018. It will not have the same kind of significant impact on the port because this liability is already partially recorded. What will happen is the full liability, instead of it being amortized over a period of time, the full liability will be on the books, but I don't expect that to have a real significant impact. And the financial statements that you have are in draft form because of a new standard that went into effect this year. We're working with the assessor's office to develop the information we need for a disclosure regarding tax abatements. The State Department of Economic Development grants 10-year tax exemptions to certain businesses, which results in a loss of revenue to the Port Commission. The GASB has decided that we need to disclose how much of a loss of revenue you have, and we're still working with the assessor's office to get that information so we can update the disclosure.
Any other questions for Mr. Felger? Thank you so much, Mark. You did a wonderful job. Mr. President, this concludes the, I'm sorry. Oh, yeah.
Oh, you slacking.
No, I
Second
gotta
by
go. I
Mr.
got another meeting after this and I'm trying to land the
Second by Mr.
plane.
Gisclair, any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
You're right, Mr. Sherman, I am. Mr. President, this concludes the financial report.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mello. Any other business? We do not need a executive, right?
No, but I would recommend we approve filing this concursus proceeding, just real quick, as we discussed in previous meetings. We still have the retainage that was withheld on the flagship contract for the project. As you know, we have several claims outstanding from Skyline Steel and Trinity Construction Materials. Filed our substantial completion 45 days have passed, and we cannot get a clear lead certificate. So what the public contract law requires that we do is file this proceeding, basically submits the retainage that we approve payment of with the clerk, and calls all those that have an interest in this money to assert their claims in court. So the reason we put the possible executive session was in case anybody had any questions, but I think it's pretty straightforward. So I would just ask that we entertain a motion and a second to approve filing the petition.
Like to make a motion, we file the petition.
Moved by Mr. Mello, second by Mr. Griffin. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Any other business?
Yeah, like that. Talking about the mosquito crew, okay? For those, for them college kids, for those who don't know, our executive director was one of the mosquito crews, right?
3 years.
3 years. And look where he's at today, so it's a good opportunity. Thank you all.
One other thing, please keep Mr. Wilbur Collins in your prayers. He still needs prayers, and he's still in the hospital, and we hope that he comes back soon.
Mr. President, I make a motion, we adjourn.
Moved by Mr. Sheramy, second by Mr. Gisclair. Any discussion? Any public comment? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Meeting adjourned. I thank each and every one of y'all for coming.